Hello and welcome to IP Study Video Lectures. Today we are going to discuss chapter number 6 of grade 6 Social Science. The chapter name is The Dawn of Indian Civilization. We will discuss in this chapter what do we understand by civilization, how a civilization existed in India about 5,000 years ago, what were its main achievements, what kind of town planning they did, the life of people there. So we will discuss all these things. And yes, we will also discuss how this great civilization came to an end. Right? So let us begin with our chapter. For this, first of all, we need to discuss the life of early humans. If you remember from an earlier chapter, we discussed that early humans used to travel from one place to another in search of food. They often had to hunt animals to get their food, or they collected fruits, they collected berries and so on. But one great discovery in the lives of early humans completely changed their lives. This discovery was that of agriculture. You see, when the early humans were able to grow their food, they could know exactly from where their food would come. This helped them to live a settled life, right? So because of this, they were living in same area and normally they tried to live near water bodies. So if you look at all the ancient civilizations, they settled near water bodies because water helped them to grow their crops, right? So because of this agriculture, we saw that they were not able to only grow food for the present needs but also store food for later needs, right? They also discovered about different metals like copper, bronze. With these metals, they made different objects. They made different equipment like their farming tools, even better tools for hunting as well. And when they started this settled life, and because they had surplus food and surplus stuff, they also started to trade. Soon we saw that the villages in which the early humans lived, they started to become towns, and even these towns started to become better. They were planned in a better manner and there were more facilities for the people living there, right? And this is how a civilization began. In our country, Indus-Saraswati civilization is considered the oldest civilization of our country and one of the oldest around the world as well. So we will study about the Indus-Saraswati civilization in this chapter, and before that we will discuss in brief what do we understand by civilization, right? So a civilization is something which has these common factors. What are these factors? First of all, people and communities. So when a large number of people come together and they start living together, that is the first criteria of becoming a civilization, right? Then culture. Now culture refers to a lot of things: literature, arts, music, dance forms, festivals and so on. So the people who are living together, they are not unfamiliar to each other. In fact, they are part of a family, they are part of a community. So this is why we see that every good civilization has a people who have a certain culture. They may be having their own writing systems, religious beliefs, their own festivals and so on. Now a civilization also has a government. It may not be necessary that they elect their own leaders like in the case of a democracy, but yes, there is some body, a group of people who is taking decisions for the decisions on the behalf of the people, right? So there would be some leaders who are actually governing the entire civilization, the entire cities and towns that come under that civilization. Then there is urban development. By urban development, we understand that these are their proper cities and towns which are made using sophisticated technology of that type, right? So it is not only about villages and all the people engaged in one kind of occupation, because there is technology to do different kinds of things. They are engaged in diverse activities. Then there is a well-sustained economy. So as we discussed, a civilization is not just villages where people are engaged in, you can say, agriculture and animal husbandry, but people are engaged in different kinds of activities. It could be pottery, it could be something related to making tools out of metal, and so on, right? So a well-sustained economy is run where people are exchanging goods either for money, or in case of some civilization, only barter system is there where they are exchanging goods with another goods, but some kind of trade is going on in that civilization. Then we talk about the advancements. Basically, a civilization is one where there is some kind of scientific developments happening, where people are trying to live a more modern life, more comfortable life. So for this, the role of science is very important, and people try to develop advanced things which help them live in a better manner. And lastly, we see a civilization has a history. So history is all about stories. So when people come together and they have a culture, it also comes with a lot of stories. For example, when we celebrate a festival like Diwali, we associate a story with that festival. Or when we celebrate Raksha Bandhan or Gurpurab or Christmas, any festival, there is a story associated with that particular festival, right? So every civilization has many stories and it has a very rich history. Now let's discuss in brief about the early civilizations of the world. Now, one of the oldest known civilizations to human beings is that of the Mesopotamia. If you look at the present scenario, Mesopotamia is somewhere located in the present day Iraq area and Syria, right? So it is considered to be about 6,000 years old, right? If we talk about the BCE time, 6,000 years ago means around 4,000 BCE, right? Because we are living in the year 2025, right? So we minus 2,000 years and we go back to the BCE calendar. So 4,000 BCE, around this time, we can say that Mesopotamia civilization used to exist. Now it was considered as one of the earliest civilizations, and they had kind of well-developed cities for that time. There is evidence to show that this civilization was kind of flourishing. Another important civilization of that actually came centuries after the Mesopotamian civilization was that of the Egyptian civilization. Now this was also known for their lot of advancements, like you take example of the pyramids of that time, right? So the pyramids of Egyptian civilization is of great wonders to our historians, because for many years they were divided on the idea about how these pyramids were actually constructed, right? They were constructed maybe 5,000 years ago, but they have survived the test of time, and it is their architecture marvel that has made it possible. Another important development of the Egyptian civilization was the development of the hieroglyphic writing. Now this form of writing is a little different from the present one, because it involves the use of pictures and symbols more than just the way we write today, right? But still it was very important. It is one of the earliest known way in which writing system was developed, right? So it's a very important discovery that we know so much about our ancient civilizations like Mesopotamia and Egyptian civilization. Around the same time that these civilizations existed, we also saw that civilizations began to develop around India, China, around even you can say Greece. So these were also very important civilizations that have shown us that even 5,000 years ago, even 4,000 years ago, people lived a very urban life, very modern life from in that time, right? Now let us start reading about the Indus-Saraswati civilization, the civilization that existed in the present day India and Pakistan. So when we say a civilization was discovered, we understand that many sites are there which actually form a civilization. If you just look at this map on the next page, it is an approximate location of the different sites that have been found both the major and the minor sites are marked here. So you will find that many of these sites are present in the present day Pakistan, but many are found in India as well, right? So the Indus-Saraswati civilization, as the name suggests, it flourished around two main river systems. One was Indus, the other was Saraswati. I'm sure you are very much aware about the Indus river system. 5 of the tributaries of the Indus river flow from the present day state of Punjab as well, right? And yes, it also is running in the present day Pakistan as well. So we are aware about the Indus river. But one river which we have less idea about today is that of the Saraswati river, right? Now this is a river, a great river that has many mentions in our ancient text as well, right? Even the Rig Veda mentions about the Saraswati river. But it also mentions that this river, you can say, suddenly disappeared from the system, right? But we understand that the river, which was believed to be a very large river, it was flourishing in the foothills of the Himalayas, even covering regions of Punjab, Rajasthan and parts of Gujarat. So it was a very important river, and it was a very large river around which the entire Indus-Saraswati civilization flourished. So in the present day, it is believed that the Saraswati river has mostly dried up. In the present scenario, the river Ghagar in India and the river Hakra in Pakistan is believed to be the part of this great Saraswati river. These are seasonal rivers, so there is no water in this river for a large part of the year. So we can see how this Saraswati river, which once thrived in the Indian subcontinent, is completely or almost completely dried up. So when did this great civilization came into existence? It is believed that around 3500 BCE that villages started to develop around Saraswati and Indus rivers, right? But it was not until 2600 BCE that we see that evidence of trade and commerce started in these regions. So after this, we see that there is evidence of planned cities, well-developed drainage systems, of trade, of exchange of goods and services, and so on, right? So there were many sites that were found in this region. Harappa was the first site to be discovered, and this is why this civilization is often called the Harappan civilization. It has other names as well: Indus-Saraswati civilization and Sindhu-Saraswati civilization. The people of this region are often known as Harappans. So Harappa was the first site which was discovered around the year 1924, but since then many sites have been found. Some of these excavations are still going on, so we don't know the exact extent of the Indus-Saraswati civilization. It could happen that 50 years later we might find more sites. Now Rakhi Gari and Ganveri Wala are some of the largest sites found in the Indus-Saraswati civilization, but there are other sites as well. Harappa, as we discussed, Mohenjo-daro, these are located in the present-day Pakistan, but there are ones which are located in India as well. Ropur, Kalibangan, Lothal, we will discuss about some of these sites in this chapter. So there are many other sites which are found. Now the story of excavation of the Harappan site is quite interesting. What happened was, 150 years ago, some construction workers who were constructing for the railways in Pakistan, in the Punjab region of Pakistan, they came across a large mound. Because they thought that the bricks which were constructing this large mound were of great quality, they took the bricks out. Now they were unaware what this was going to lead. It was not until 1924 that we saw that the people realized the importance of these bricks. Actually, it was understood by the historians that these bricks or this great mound belonged to one of the greatest sites of the ancient times, the Indus-Saraswati civilization, right? Now let us move to our next topic. We often say that Indus-Saraswati civilization was one of the most advanced civilizations of its time. Why do we say so? Well, we have a lot of evidence from our historians that suggest us that these cities were very well planned, right? So what was the exact way in which they were planned? What information do we have? Let us study under this topic of town planning. So first of all, these cities were divided into two main parts. You see, we have so many sites that were discovered much later from Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. While Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were discovered around 1924-1925, the other sites were discovered much later. But they showed some common patterns, and that was how the cities or the towns were divided. So we see that these cities were divided into two main parts. First was a taller part which was known as the citadel. Then the other part was that of the lower town. As you can imagine, as the name suggests in fact, that this was lower than the citadel. Now if you see at the width, the citadel had less width, whereas the lower town had more width, right? So maybe it was the case that the influential people or the royalty, the king and his family used to live in the citadel, whereas the common people used to live in the lower town, right? So we can see there is some kind of social difference in the society, the way it is organized. So some people lived in citadel, which was the raised part of the town, whereas in the lower part of the town, the lower town, the other people used to live. The streets that were made during that time were also very well planned. We have evidence that these streets were very wide and they were mostly straight. They cut each other at right angles. So even if the streets we had to change streets, it was not difficult because they were very well managed. They were cutting each other at right angles. The houses that were constructed during this time were constructed for 1 story or 2 stories. They were not of the same sizes, they were varying in size, but yes, even 2-story houses existed during that time. You also see the use of baked bricks. Now, baked bricks were better than sun-dried bricks because they were more durable, because they could last longer and even they were more resistant to water. So we can understand that the people living in these Harappan sites had this much knowledge of engineering, that which kind of bricks they needed to use. They could construct wide roads, they could construct two-story houses, and they also had a lot of large buildings. Now these large buildings were perhaps used as palaces or maybe assembly halls, and one of the greatest of these buildings, the largest of this, was called the Great Granary, as you can see in the picture. So we can see from the existence of Great Granary that they had a well-developed agriculture. They must be growing enough crops to have a surplus. Only when you have a surplus, you need to store the extra food grains, right? So this is a proof that their agriculture was very well developed. That is why they needed a great granary to store the extra food crops. Another example of the engineering marvel of this time was the drainage system. Now their drainage system was very well developed. Every street had its own dedicated drainage system. So these drains were connected to the houses, and from the houses the sewage used to come. Now in many parts of India still we see that the drains are not well covered. But here we have evidence that the drains were very well covered, so that there is no spread of diseases, right? And there was a manhole which was be accessed, where people used to come and manage those manholes, so that if there is any requirement of cleaning it, any requirement of blockages, you could manage the drainage system with the help of these manholes. So we can see the people used to take extra care of sanitation, extra care of cleanliness even during this time. Now another great structure of this time was the Great Bath found at Mohenjo-daro, as you can see in the picture. You know, as we talk about the pyramids found in Egypt and we associate them with the Egyptian civilization, the Great Bath is one such structure which we associate with the Indus-Saraswati civilization. Now it was a huge structure, about 12 meters in length, 7 meters in width and about 2.4 meters in depth, right? Now there were also staircase Like if you want to go down there, you can go with the help of stairs, and it is on all the 4 sides. There were also changing rooms which were there along the Great Path. It is just like a modern swimming pool, as you can imagine a modern swimming pool. There was a hole inside it which was there to clean the water, right? From time to time, even in a swimming pool, we need to clean the entire water and replace it with fresh water. So even that was there. It was built in a way that it was watertight as such. No water was seeping into the ground, right? But yes, they had the hole because they wanted to clean it from time to time. So we can see it was very well managed, and another example that they knew their engineering. They knew how to construct different structures. Now the exact purpose of this structure is not known to us. Some historians suggest that perhaps it was used for royal bathing, that only the influential people, the king and their family used to use the great bath, but some others suggest that maybe it was used for religious rituals, right? Religious bathing. Just like you go to a place like Haridwar where you dip in the holy water of river Ganga. Similarly, maybe people used to come here on religious occasions. So we don't know the exact reason. So these are some suggestions by the historians. Now talking about the water management and sanitation, we already discussed about the very well sophisticated way in which the drainage system was designed. It was connected to all the houses on the street, and it was well covered and well monitored as well through manholes, right? So they took great care of health and hygiene at that time, right? Now, talking about the water management, we will talk about the different water sources that were present during this time. If we look at Mohenjo-daro, one of the important sources of water was that of the brick wells, right? So these were providing the water to people in Mohenjo-daro. Apart from this, we see that there were streams, there were lakes, there were even man-made reservoirs. So reservoirs are created by human beings. They are the places where we can store water. So if you look at Dholavira, which is a site in Gujarat, we find a reservoir which is about 73 meters, right? So it is the largest reservoir that is found there. And apart from it also, Dholavira has about 6 reservoirs, right? So again, it shows the example that because maybe agriculture was very developed in this region and they needed water for different purposes, so they found the need to store water, right? Now let us discuss the important cities in Gujarat. Now these sites had some unique findings inside them. First of all, talking about Lothal, in this site we found a dockyard. Now a dockyard is a place where ships are managed. Basically, if there's any maintenance required, any repair work required in the ships, all that is done in a dockyard. So this proves that this Lothal, this city, was actually a port. All the overseas trade with civilizations such as Mesopotamia was done through this site. Another important finding in this site was the presence of a beads factory. So beads, ornaments, different kind of shells, all these things were exported to Mesopotamia with the help of the port that was present in Lothal. Now this city was divided into 2 parts, just like other cities of the Indus-Saraswati civilization, but the lower part, basically the lower part of this city was divided into 2 parts. One of it was the commercial town, commercial area. The other one was the residential area. So again, this shows the presence of market in this site shows how important it was for the economy of that time, right? Another important site that was found in Gujarat was that of Dholavira. Now, Dholavira is one of the 5 largest sites that have been discovered in the Indus-Saraswati civilization. The unique part about this site was that here it was divided into 3 parts. So one is the citadel, second is the middle town, and the last one is the lower town. So it is the only site present in the Indus Saraswati civilization that is divided into 3 parts. And here also we see that a lot of trade was happening. We have evidence that many artifacts, many objects were made out of silver, out of gold, out of copper, out of bronze. So all these things were found here. And the presence of all these artifacts does not only show that they were technologically very advanced, that they could create all these items with different kind of material. It is also a proof that they were artistic in nature. All these objects highlight their artistic expression. So they were sophisticated in terms of technology and they were artistic in terms of expression as well. Now let us discover more about the life of people living in these Indus Saraswati sites. We will discuss the various aspects of their life. First of all, we will discuss about their food. Now, as we understand that by this time, civilizations had begun to develop around the world as well. Agriculture was an important activity that people performed, and people of Indus Saraswati sites also, they grew their own food. Food like wheat, barley, and occasionally rice was grown by the people. These are some of the food grains that we consume even today. They also domesticated different animals. Dogs and cats were domesticated. Also useful animals like sheep, like wild boar, deer, all these were domesticated, and their meat was also eaten by people. Vegetables and pulses were also a part of their diet. Occasionally, because we understand that vegetables are seasonal in nature, so it might not be grown throughout the year, but whichever area supported the growth of these vegetables, they were grown in those areas and were consumed by the people. Talking about the clothing habits of the people living in this civilization, it is believed that cotton was worn by people. This civilization is believed to be one of the first in Eurasia to grow cotton. If we talk about the men used to wear something similar to a shawl and a dhoti in the modern times. About the women used to wear a large cloth around their body, and they used another cloth to tie it up. So the first cloth was like a modern day sari, while the other cloth was somewhat similar to a modern day belt, right? So this is how the people used to dress themselves up. Apart from cotton, however, there is some evidence that wool was also used by the people in making their clothes. Talking about the occupation of people, most of the people were engaged in agriculture. They also domesticated different animals such as sheep, buffalo, and even evidence suggests that horses were also domesticated. Now the Harappan sites were not only known for their agriculture, they were actually very well advanced markets as well, where trade was going on all the time. So we have a lot of evidence of different artifacts, different things which were manufactured during this time. And important activities like spinning, weaving, pottery making were also common occupations of the people living in that time. Now moving further, let's talk about the ornaments and jewelry worn by the people during this time. There were different ornaments that have been found. Now let us discuss about the ornaments and jewelry worn by the people living in these Harappan sites. There is evidence to show that various ornamental items like necklaces, bracelets, armlets, and finger rings were worn by the people living in the region. And these were worn not only by women but also by men. Silver and gold were commonly used, and silver was used more than gold during this time. Gold was most likely imported from the present-day Karnataka, whereas some precious stones were imported from Gujarat and Iran. Another important material was used during this time to make different ornamental items, and that was faience. Now it's a ceramic material which is of very good quality for making ornamental items. So again we can see that the people's craftsmanship was very remarkable. They were able to manufacture many ornamental items that people used to wear in their daily lives. Another example of their craftsmanship was the toys which were made during this time. A special clay called terracotta clay was used to manufacture many toys. One of the important toys included the wheelchair, whistles, and different figures of animals and birds. Now let us discuss about another important topic, trade. We have enough evidence to suggest that extensive trade was taking place in the civilization. If we look at Mesopotamian civilization's records, we see a proof of many seals and artifacts from the Harappan civilization. So these things were found in the Mesopotamian civilization, suggesting that trade was going on between the two civilizations. Now, apart from the Mesopotamian civilization, the Indus-Saraswati civilization was also trading with other cultures. Their shells were brought from Kathiawar region, from Persia and Afghanistan. They had silver, turquoise, and other stuff being imported. They also were importing copper from Rajasthan and Oman as well. So all these trade ties suggest how well connected the Indus-Saraswati civilization truly was. Now, one of the proofs of how we understand that trade was happening with so many civilizations is because the seals were found there. See, these seals were used just like you have stamp duties today. These seals were used in the purpose of trading most probably, and that is why the Harappan seals have been found in different regions around the world. These seals are interesting in their own way because they provide us with a lot of information. Just like the coins provide us with a lot of information about their time, what kind of symbols were important back then, which rulers were ruling at that point of time, what kind of things were considered sacred and important during that time. Similarly, these Harappan seals also provide us with a lot of such information. One-horned unicorns, buffaloes, tigers, rhinoceros, these were some of the animals that could be found in these Harappan seals. Now let us discuss about the religious beliefs of the people living in the Harappan civilization. While there is no proof of a widespread religion, we have some evidence of different deities that were found in this region. There are many deities of a female goddess. This has been referred to as mother goddess by the historians. We also have evidence that people might be worshipping to the peepal tree and also to the earth as a fertility goddess. Another important deity of this time was that of Pashupati. Now this has been found in the Pashupati seal. As we discussed before, seals are very important to tell us about the beliefs of the people living during a time. This seal suggests us that this deity Pashupati is surrounded by an elephant, a tiger, a rhinoceros, a buffalo, and 2 deers. This deity Pashupati was perhaps a form of Lord Shiva. Moving on, let's discuss about the writings found during this time. Now, different scripts have been found which have the Harappan writings, but these have not been deciphered by the historians. So these are the different writings that have been found, but the historians have not understood what these writings are about. They are not able to read this script. These scripts are pictographic, which means that it uses a lot of symbols and pictures, but because we do not understand what they say, we do not understand the meaning behind these writings. Now this case study talks about a very important art form present in the Harappan civilization, and that was of metallurgy. Basically, Harappans were great at their metal work. If you just look at the statue of a dancing girl found in Mohenjo-daro, you will see how fine the artistic work is. They basically made objects from different items, but yes, bronze was used extensively during this time. So this tells us not only about their sophisticated way in which they made their stuff, but also their artistic expression in which they so clearly express the different perspectives of their times. Now let's move to the last topic of this chapter. We will discuss about the decline of the Indus-Saraswati civilization. So we studied that this Indus Saraswati civilization flourished around 2600 BCE. But by 1900 BCE, we understand that this civilization began to decline. What was the exact reason behind the decline? We are not very sure. So historians have different theories which speculate why this great civilization came to an end. Let's discuss some of these theories. One of the theories is that of climate change. It is assumed that maybe there was a significant change in the climate patterns of this region. Maybe there were large-scale floods or there could be large-scale droughts. In either of these cases, people were not able to adjust to the different climate. Another important theory is that perhaps the rivers had dried up. Because the rivers had dried up, agriculture was not possible, people were not able to grow their foods, and if you cannot have agriculture, you cannot have trade or any other thing as well. Life will really perish away from a region where food is not present. Large-scale deforestation is another reason that is given by the historians which could have led to the decline of the civilization. Because the cities became more and more urbanized, there was requirement of more and more natural resources. So perhaps they cut trees on a large scale which brought a lot of calamities. Some historians also suggest that perhaps there were wars in between the different sides of the Harappan civilization. Perhaps the rulers became weak and they were fighting among themselves. However, there is less merit to this theory because there is no evidence of large-scale war happening in this region. These sites were considered more or less very peaceful. And lastly, one theory that has been completely denied by historians in the recent times is that of Aryan invasion. Earlier, many believed that because Aryans traveled from Central Asia to this region, they had killed the people living in this region and established their own civilization. But evidence suggests us that Aryans came much after the Indus-Saraswati civilization had already perished. So there is no evidence to support the Aryans invasion theory. So with that, we complete this chapter. We have read about the lives of the people living in the Indus-Saraswati civilization, how they grew different kinds of crops, they domesticated different kinds of animals, how their towns were so well planned, their drainage system was so sophisticated, there was craftsmanship, there was art, there were ornaments worn by people, and people engaged in trade as well. But we also learned how this civilization mysteriously ended. Perhaps many historians, as they believe, the reason behind the end of the civilization was that people really did not take care of their nature, and that is something we need to learn. In the race of development, we cannot really ignore the needs of this planet, and if we do that, we can have a more sustainable way of looking at life, and we can have development at all times, not a kind of development that can lead to our end, right? So I hope you enjoyed this chapter, and we will meet again in our next video lecture. Thank you so much.